Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf, the podcast, a serial killer drama.
Hello and welcome to Werewolf, the podcast, the serial killer drama, episode 183. It's the episode before the game show, and that's what it's called because that's about as imaginative I've got at this time of night. Anyway, go down to following button and stuff and follow us. You know, it's there on Spotify, so if you click that, that'd be grand. Go and check out. There's the description-y bit where everything's written, and there's loads of links in there. You can get Greg's books. You can go and listen to our recent podcast we did with Cocktails with Cav. And you can just do things like join the Facebook group and meet some like-minded lunatics. Remember, as always, what is it we do? Yeah? What? Oh, yeah, we love you all. Thank you. Bye. Will. I watched the police car roll to a stop outside the Crown Bar. The door opens and a small police officer gets out of the car, wrapped up against the weather. Nah, I already say that. She gets dragged from the car, the door acting as a sail. This amuses Fenrir. It would do. It's always funny to see some dumb animal fall or stumble, especially a little vulnerable one. Or is that just us? Is it? It's probably just us, isn't it? No? Not just us? That's good to know. It is female, and judging by the way that it's getting blown around like a feather in the wind, I can make a good guess that it is a little female. My senses of smell and hearing, although much more refined than those of a human, have no chance against Mother Nature when she's in full-blowing full. Then the man of the hour gets out of the passenger side. The man, the mystery, the immortal Professor Simon de Montfort. He's obviously switched on from the start. He's had centuries of combat and treachery. Yeah, treachery is a great description. He scopes the area partly out of the door. He's always got the way out that he may require if necessary. If something goes wrong, he could now step back in the vehicle and just go at will. Would he bother saving the little lady if it came to it? I think he would like to think so. So I think he would. Fen nodded in agreement. He was once a foe, then somehow became a friend. Seemed like a true friend, something that I'd not really had before. A friend, apart from Fen. I trusted him with no leverage over him to ensure that trust. Usually the people around me are sort of held true by, fear of prospective violence or the fear of the information that I have over them and I'd be able to expose. And I suppose in most sort of cases it's both. As another layer to my fear-mongering, I was not known for my self-control. My unpredictability to most was my sort of most feared and personally developed feature. Funny, the devil was of a very different opinion than that. Apparently, I didn't sort of come off the straight and narrow. It was joy to watch another professional paranoid do his work. He was a keyed into the night. He had all the angles swept, and his knowledge of the roadway we were upon would be held in his memory. Any areas of risk would be noticed and strategized against. At least 3 escape plans had been hatched before he made any movement forward to the next part of his agenda. The little police officer, on the other hand, was just trying to stay the right way up in the wind. He went to the other police car that sat outside the bar. The 2 officers inside the vehicle had settled down to what would be called a nap. Well, wouldn't be called a nap or a sleep, but what would be more often called a kip. a little bit of a head down while they waited for the knobs to come and do their bit. In Wick, it was not something that they would be embarrassed about. The only thing that could happen on a night like this was, a lost cow or a bunch of drunks misplaced and on the loose. A bunch of drunks that they should have been part of, these two police officers in this car. I could sense the Professor's irritation at these men from here. I could see it in his body language as he approached the car. In these cases, he seemed very forgiving to me. He would not point out their mistake or make them feel bad about it. He probably wouldn't even mention it, but I knew inside that it hurt him. This lack of professionalism. 1-0 to the irate English gentleman. Once woke and buttoned down for the weather, the two men wearily swung their way out of the car. The car rose several inches off its suspension as the driver got out. He was not a mountain of a man, he was a butterball of a man. How many people could just walk away from this man if he gave chase? Probably all of them. He probably knows everyone in this town. He doesn't need to run after them, he just needs to remember one of the multitude of his cousins' names, said Fen. I nodded. The chat between the officers and the Professor was brief and to the point. Again I sensed Simon's annoyance at the lack of detail. He bristled at the lack of information for the thing that he was going to do. He expected a lot from people he worked with. It irked him that people did not have a mind like his, but how could they? He'd been in the military and intelligence services since the 1300s. That is a lot of experience on the job, although being an expert jouster or a bastard sword wielder was not necessary on the modern person's CV, I suppose. Maybe if you were an history teacher, said Fen. Yeah, I suppose so. Like, first-hand knowledge like that would be brilliant in a teacher's case, huh? I replied. No, you daft bat. I mean for self-protection. He laughed. Those damn kids, I said. After a chat with the two coppers, he stood and waited and watched them leave. This was how prepared he was. He knew not to enter the crime scene unless he was not going to be disturbed by others and, I don't know, something he knew better than me. Eventually the tormented car left the scene. They'd gone, and this allowed him to study his environment without being overwhelmed by the car and its lights and its engine and people. He now quartered the area and searched each quarter bit by bit. I was well hidden, but I could imagine that he had some sort of tingle of experience, even with my invisibility, that something was not right out there. I saw him sigh. He wasn't content with what he could sense, and I could tell from his movements, he wasn't happy. He did the search again, the 4 quarters. This was interesting. This need to be sure man was unsure of his situation. I like that. The little police officer disturbed his thoughts and his chin dropped as he showed the world that he was a little disgruntled at this interruption. I could imagine his thoughts. His main one would be to remain nice. He started to turn, preparing to speak to the little policewoman, but something disturbed him. He turned back in my direction very quickly, as if he noticed me. His face was blank as he stared out directly at me. Did he know? He almost held my gaze. Then that fleeting moment was gone and broken as he forced a smile and turned to speak to the obviously annoying woman. He is the most charming being on the planet when he wants to be. He has that English gentleman's act honed to perfection. I even met the character on which he based that thespian role, or at least I think it's based on, the mighty Ernest. Ernest, a creature much like a coelacanth, had been thought to be extinct. Not the case. There remained one in the wild. It's the last of its kind and allows our Professor to function as a nice guy with its support. Unlike Ernest, I had got to know I like to think, true Simon. I knew Simon well now, and what was under that facade of a man was not the true English gentleman. He was a killer, a monster of his own kind. A monster who had very much had his claws removed so he could get redemption from a life of murder and genocide. Would Ernest be friends with a man like that? Would he? I wonder, you never know, all men change, eh? He affably herded the woman to the car door and helped her in against her will, but with her being happy doing it against her will. I even knew that she would go on her way having a little more joy in her heart at this meeting with this delightful silver fox. His minor seductions and ability to read people and manipulate them was extraordinary. Not many realise the darkness that he hides. At least I'm openly me. I don't hide it behind a mask of nobleness and kindness. If she had to die for the sake of his task, do you know what? He wouldn't bat an eyelid for a second. Maybe he would feel a moment of regret, but would it soon be pushed away and not considered again? I'm pretty sure. I'm not saying he's uncaring, but he was just a master of justification. Supposing she had to die for the cause, well, I don't think he'd have a problem in justifying her death. He could find the justification without thought. Once she got in the car, he did another search of the area. That paranoia. He held the car by leaning on the roof so the officer could not leave without disturbing him from his work, as he did his work. He was making sure he was at a relatively safe sort of level before he let an avenue of escape leave. I could see how he was not 100% happy with his location, but he stepped back and gave the roof of the car a hefty bang, smiling at the woman whilst waving her off. He finally walked towards the bar's door. There he paused as he saw him building himself up to go in to the pub. I felt a warm fuzziness inside as he entered the bar. Both Fen and I were laughing a little. Oh, the joy I would feel at his horror. Normally I would have asked Fenrir, my invisible wolf soul, to go and watch the despicable diorama be appreciated, but I was not sure if the professor would have, noticed him there. I would not put it past him in a way. He was a devious bastard after all. There was a minute or two when I could see the man using a torch through the windows. Any second now, I told the wolf soul. We were both waiting for it. Can you imagine the scene he would have displayed to him when the lights went on? I had done my work well. I'd done it with the want to cause him disgust and hurt. I'd even left a little reminder of his past. I'd left one corpse defiled as he had been said to have been defiled at his mistaken death. He would be sure to get the point. I now sat and waited, tightly tucked up against the inclement weather. He was doing a thorough job. What that job was, I had no idea. He should know that anyone in there was dead. I would not have left anything alive in there, would I? He should know that I would not be in there. I mean, sometimes I'm a little ill-prepared or unaware, but I would always meet him on my terms, but this wasn't my terms. Well, not in there. The display of my art in this not-so-well-known gallery was done for two wonderful reasons. One, to show Her Majesty Lucifer that she does not have this little doggy on a leash. And two, to show him that I was out to hurt him, upset the man's world, make him angry so that he breaks his own rules. I knew I couldn't kill him, but I wanted to hurt him mentally. I knew doing so would take a lot, but you know me. I love to create misery and horror. I would put my whole heart and darkened soul into it, irritating and angering the man. I wandered forward. No, I know it should have been wondered, but I wondered at his reaction as I wandered forward. I was in an odd mix of blood-covered garb. I'd had to borrow clothes from my kills, leaving me with an odd mixture of kit. Some of what I wore hurt my feelings. I had a fucking Stone Island jacket on. Stone Island was never supposed to touch this magnificent frame, but needs must. My feet were bare though. The only footwear to fit were yellow Crocs. That would never happen. I sat below the street lamp across from the door of the bar. I would be in direct sight as he left the building. The light flickered and rattled in the wind like something out of a 50s horror movie. This should have been filmed. The scene was perfect. Oh, how I wish you humans had the readiness to enjoy my work. As I leant against the lamppost, I turned and looked at the wolf soul. He was not communicating with me. I did not need to hear him to feel his excitement. His eyes burned brightly. We both loved the moment before the conflict, that moment before the fight. We sat, we waited.
Lucifer. I had got past the werewolf and his inability to be manipulated. It took a while. We now had a plan. A good plan. My surroundings in my office on the 10th level of hell showed my mood. It was a spitting image of Dumbledore's office in Harry Potter world. Oh, you had to know that it was me and JK who put those oh-so-wonderful stories together. I have no time to go into detail at this point, but it was brilliant how we made the world believe that being a witch or wizard and doing magic and incantations was a jolly good thing to do. Millions of kids and even millions of adults were hooked on the stories. The adults were mostly an unexpected bonus, but hey, even the devil gets a lucky break now and again. Yeah, I know. Who knew that those religious extremists were right? You know, the ones who said that it was anti-Christian and all that. We had pushed the boundaries when we made vibrating broomsticks. Genuinely, we did that. Check out Mattel's back catalogue. You can imagine what the little ladies getting them thought of them. You had a job getting them to get off them. I'm not knocking JK's writing, but it was not magnificent prose. It was not a world-changing, genre-bending work of fiction. So how did it do so well? Well, you can imagine what type of marketing team we have down here. Only the worst. The worst people that there were. The kind that could happily sell your children poison and not lose a moment of sleep. The type of people that would sell your sweet wee daughter a vibrating broomstick. I had a load of strange silver gadgets whistling and spinning on my desk. I sat in the most uncomfy but most awesomely carved chair ever. It was like I was sitting on the knee of a reclined griffon. Its head held green jewels for eyes. Wowzers, I must be in a good mood. Around the room were moving portraits of confused-looking wizards and witches. None could hold my eye. Excitingly, I also had the Phoenix. What's he called in the books? Well, whatever he was called, he was sitting behind me on a perch. The Phoenix, in this case, was an unhappy third-level demon and my personal secretary. "What the hell am I supposed to be?" asked Fauchelevent Trudeur. I turned to her. She looked magnificent, I have to admit. Flames of yellows, reds and golds played over the bird's surface. "You, my darling, are a firebird," I told my little friend. "You made me a bird?" "Oh, for the love of God, a bird?" Oh, I loved the little push of anger she gave me. I laughed and nodded. "And very beautiful you are too, my darling," I told her with a not-so-inconspicuous wink. "I am not enjoying this," she continued as I turned away and looked around the room for other key details. "Hey, are you listening to me?" the little demon shouted. I sighed and clicked my fingers, and the Phoenix burst into flames in a very cinematic manner. A little black cat suddenly appeared and sat on the edge of Dumbledore's desk. This was her favourite form. I had never heard a cat sigh before. This one did with distinct pleasure as she checked herself up and down to ensure she was up to her own standards. The little black she-cat now sat with its tail in constant motion. You could tell she was pissed off. Her eyes were fixed on me. I smiled at this act of disapproval. "Your Hell 30 appointment is waiting outside," said the little cat with a smirk. I turned to the smug little, "Who the f—" The doorway was filled with his angelicness. The Gabriel stood in all his glowing golden glory, leaning on the left-hand side of the doorway. He raised a lazy salute to his brow and threw a smile at me. It landed hard, and I was a little dizzy for a moment with the fashing ting of it. "Ah," said the little cat. Gabriel turned the salute into a whimsical finger gun that he pointed at me and pretended to fire. As the shot hit me in the heart, he lifted the handgun and blew the smoke, which formed a heart from his fingers. I gulped in the automatic response of a smitten little girl. The little cat laughed as I got myself together. Oh, his wings were so enormous. I took my eyes off him, picked up my Hogwarts letter opener, and stabbed it deep into the desk. My strength drove it far too deep into the wood. Even Gabriel was shaken for a moment. "You are not welcome here right now," I told him, half a lie. Lying is my job.
Ah, I see what you did there. I mean, that would mean that I would be welcome at other times, wouldn't it?
He said. I flashed him a look that only the Lord of Hell could give someone, and I returned to my digging of the desk. He was gorgeous, but dumb as a sack of slug souls. I left a silence for him to fill as I dug.
Okay. I've been sent from him upstairs. This is really not my doing, Lucy.
I thought angels could not lie. He has blessed your idea, I told him.
Well, yes, that may be.
He scratched his chin as he considered his following sentence.
Now, you see the plan you've made? Yes, well, the provision you made against fate and the deal you did with the djinn have to be, changed.
He told me as he inspected his nails in a dainty way so as not to make eye contact with me. Why? I asked, not looking up from the crater I was digging in Dumbledore's desk.
Well, you see...
He paused reflexively.
Fate came and actually saw him about it.
Again, he pointed at the ceiling as if the pointing explained everything.
And...
He sucked on his teeth. Why? I spat.
Well, Fate was a little upset at, you cheating him.
I slammed the letter opener deep into the grain of wood, where it snapped and cut my flesh deep. Blood did not ooze from the rent now in my flesh. No blood poured, just a line of bright fire issued from the rip. It healed as I stared at it. It had dared to mar my skin. The slash healed in embarrassment, leaving no visible mark. I did not cheat. I used the rules that I have. I'm sorry if fate does not like them, I said.
Well, however it was done, me, I just get the job of delivering the details. You see, the laws are particular. You have to change things because you can't play the game on any of our ethereal planes. You can't play the game in any of our spiritual realms.
He told me smugly. After a few centuries of experience, I knew that arguing at this point was stupid, I thought. The Gormant's realm? I asked him.
Well, you should know that no life can exist there, Lucy.
He told me a little abashed. I roared and raged into a firebrand, instantly burning everything around me. Only my little cat and Gabriel held their form against the firestorm. Oh, how I felt belittled and betrayed. As I calmed from my hysterics, the angel mentally rebuilt the room we had been in. It was a bit more golden and had cherubs in it now, but it was almost the exact same room. I started my digging of the desk once more with a fresh envelope opener, ignoring the angel. Time passed. He hummed. I ignored. He hummed.
I'll just be off then, shall I, Lucy?
The Gabriel said. He waited for a moment. Then, ting, he was gone. Thank
Hey, all right, lads and lasses. I sat staring at the bone dice on the bar. I had a wish. Me, Bosworth, a fucking genie with a wish. It were right there, just right there. What was I gonna wish for? Maybe a real human body. I could be flesh and blood and have, like, physical touch. Oh, I could have a soul. I could have a path to mortality, a life, and an end. I looked around my little reality. I do love it, but I'd never touched it. I'd never felt its physicalness. I'd never washed a glass at my own bar. I could. Ting. She sat next to me at bar, the mighty queen of hell herself. She was beautiful, but in foulest of moods. She seemed right on flipping edge of holding herself together, you know. Flames licked at fine form she had formed. "How do, love?" I said. She singed all in bar top with the tip of her finger. Take some advantage to get that out. A wisp of burnt wood lifted into the air. She mumbled. "Sorry," I said. She repeated. I couldn't make out no words. Her hair hid her face and stuff, and I just couldn't see now. "Sorry, could you speak up, love?" I asked her. She turned to look at me.
We can't play the game in hell, heaven, or any other ethereal plane.
She told me like a proper sense of sadness wafted off her.
We can't follow the plan.
She said as she stared out into distance. A distance that wasn't there. But why? I asked her grumpiness.
Well, it's out of my hands. Fate's a cheat. He went behind my back and spoke to God.
Fliss floated over, you know, that in that weird way that the fair do. The beautiful elven woman didn't even look so beautiful when next to dark goddess. Aye, but she delivered a martini to Lucy. The cocktail sticks pierced through things that weren't olives. I could see that. Get it? I could see that. Yeah, grimmer. Did I dare to remind Lucy that she'd actually cheated to get what she wanted? Nah, I like me bloody bar. Oh, well, that's a bit shit, I told her. So you can't have it in hell?
No.
So can you not do it on earth? She shook her head, looking like dead sullen while stirring her martini with her skewers. "Ah," I said, "that's not good." I flicked a drink for me sen onto the bar. I telepathically asked Fliss to push the dice down to her where it tapped the bottom of Lucy's glass, and it, of course, then rolled, and obviously would roll a bloody 6, wouldn't it? Lucy touched top at die with her ring finger of her right hand as if considering it, and she then just sat there and sucked a delicious top lip. Maybe it ain't a good idea for me to wish for a human body. I don't think I'd be able to cope if I saw something like this if I was all, like, physical, you know.
Nah, you keep it.
I can't, I sadly told her. I'm afraid something like that has to be earned. My voice must have sounded as sad as hers. We both sat and stared at glasses before us for some time. "Well, this is somewhat disappointing, ain't it, love?" I told her. She nodded. "Oh well, no body and touch for me. Damn that god. These new gods come along and really mess things up with their latest ideas and rules." Fliss stood looking at us as she wiped bar with a cloth. She sensed the sadness in the air.
"I was sorry for listening, but I think I have the answer,"
she said. "There ain't no answer, Fliss," I told her, and she laughed in response. We both looked at her a little unkindly, and then she laughed again. "Well, what then? Bloody what?" I asked her. "Come on, Fliss, don't leave us in suspenders. Please," I asked her.
"Well, this place is ungodly, is it not?"
she said. "Well, it's a bit harsh. I mean, it's not the most beautiful place," I began. A beautiful
Oh!
sprang from me drinking companion. I turned to her.
There is no God here.
Lucifer said.
We can do it here.
She yelled, turning to me in celebration. I held me silence. She waited and excitement slowly dissipated from her face. Oh, well, you see, lass, it's difficult for me. I told her. I wouldn't have been able to make eye contact if I'd actually had eyes. It would, really piss him off upstairs, and that's, it's not great for me, I told her. She now stood tapping her foot in that way that women do, arms crossed in that aggressive hip-out stance. I looked at Fliss for support and got the same stance from her.
You get your bloody dice.
Lucy growled.
You get your bloody dice.
Repeated Fliss a little less politely. Well, I'm sorry, girls, I really am, but I'm going to need more than that, I'm afraid, I told them. All I got in response was the quick eyebrows arch of Attack of the Beauties. Hey, it is a thing that I ask that will be hard for you to accept and allow, but if you cannot agree, we cannot come to some deal. I love speaking in double negatives. The women looked at each other and then back at me with a face of inquiry. Okay, do you want to hear me unfortunate request? I asked.
Yes.
Well, you see, I want to be in charge of music. DJ Bozzy on the decks. It was right greatly making these two beautiful women laugh. Fliss even threw a tea towel at me phone. Well, did land on floor, but
My name is DJ Bozzy.
The Professor. The man, the werewolf, stared at me across the road. I unbuttoned my jacket and pulled the dagger of Amun-Ra from my pocket. Ernest had said that this quartz dagger from the Mesopotamian era could possibly sever the wolf soul Fen from the soul of the human. I was going to end it here. I would finish the monster where he stood. And I ran. It ends here! I yelled as a somewhat rubbish war cry. He just stood and smiled. He wasn't even going to transform. This wasn't like him. It was so strange that I stopped in front of the man. What had he up his Stone Island jacket? Was this even Will? Stone Island? His lack of trepidation put me off. I stopped a few yards from him. I waved the dagger at him a little half-heartedly. He looked at it and smiled as though it was some sort of a toy.
what's that supposed to do?
He asked as he pointed at the blade. Well, it won't kill you, but it will separate you from Fen, I said with uncontained anger. In response, he laughed. The utter bastard laughed at me. Don't you dare laugh at the dagger of Amun-Ra, you utter tosser! I snarled at him.
I don't believe he'd do that.
He told me. With idiosyncratic skill and experience, I read his eyes. He was either a great actor, or he genuinely believed that.
I don't think even you are callous enough to do that, Simon. Are we not friends?
He opened his arms, his eyes on mine. He offered a hug. A hug. I was very confused. The arm holding the dagger fell to my side. He hugged me and laughed as an old friend laughs. I raised my arms and smiled. But it was a vindictive smile. I plunged the dagger into the man's back. He looked at me with shock, with actual hurt. He stumbled away, trying to get a hand to the dagger.
You!
He fell to his knees in front of me.
You!
For some reason, I wanted to help him. Did I? Did I really want to help him? He gurgled and wailed as he lashed around in the noisome night. I felt sick at what I'd done, but it was right. Another nasty deed for God. I turned away from the man. Doing so felt like an utterly cowardly act. I should have had the guts to watch what I had done. He was gurgling, and then he laughed. I turned to the man. He stood before me, holding the bloody dagger in his hands. I felt a brief moment of relief, and then anger at feeling that relief. He smiled at me.
Didn't work.
He told me, offering it to me again whilst turning his back. I reached for it. Then, okay, everything went black, and then the bright lights that shone on me shone so brightly, they hurt my eyes. I couldn't see, I couldn't focus. What the hell was going on? Was that an audience? Clapping? Where in hell were we now?
Welcome, ladies and germs, lords and lasses, boys, imps, and all in between. So it's called the Game Show because demons are not that imaginative. Hosted by Noel Edmund!
Brought to you in association with Grendel Press. This is Werewolf, the podcast, a serial killer drama.